All right, you guys. Scott Ryan here, Director of Fit Society. I'm here with Mary Wight, Registered Dietitian, Certified Personal Trainer, also one of our wonderful coaches here at Fit Society. Just give you a little bit about Mary and some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Mary received her Bachelor of Science in Nutrition Science degree from University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
We like to say Nevada, but I'll let it go since you're from back east.
I had a feeling. She had a concentration in sports nutrition. She interned at the VA hospital. She specialized working with bariatric surgery patients. So she's worked a lot in weight loss, weight gain, and also maintenance. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. She's spent over 6 years doing this, so she has a lot of experience on multiple different levels. She's worked with athletes of all different kinds. So we're going to get to touch on some different parts of whether those athletes are looking to maybe gain some muscle and gain some weight, or lose some weight or body fat. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. So Mary, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me,
Always
Scott.
good to have you here. So you moved to San Diego in 2010. Is that correct?
It's 10 years now. This is crazy.
Oh, man.
So That's like I'm a local, right?
Yes, that does make you a local. So what's cool is Mary is a super athlete herself. She does all sorts of races, runs, anywhere from Ragnars to marathons. She's done over 24 half marathons. She's done 3 full marathons. She's done, like I said, a bunch of Ragnar races, and even more importantly, she's been getting her butt kicked as a member here for the last couple of years. So that always makes it really nice when they're super familiar with how we do things here, because it's very specific to how you treat your clients, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to touch on some general things today. We're going to talk about our general nutrition, some maintenance, and, of course, want to gain some weight, want to lose some weight. We'll touch on those a little bit. Times are a little bit crazy. Obviously, with everything going on, people being stuck in quarantine.
We're excited to see how you guys come back.
Man, it's going to be one of two extremes is really what we kind of talk about is, are people at home for the last 10 weeks, have they been consistent, right? We have some of our athletes who have been following us every single day, 5 days a week.
Fantastic.
And we got a good feeling they're going to come back even stronger.
They're going to be great. And their core is going to be so good because of all the core that Scotty and Kainoa have been giving you. I know I feel it the couple days a week that I'm coaching on there. Whew.
So that's the best case scenario, that we have athletes coming back who have been doing stuff. But we do have athletes who have been pretty stagnant or kind of stuck at home. They don't have equipment. They don't have weights. They don't have any of the stuff that they feel they need to be able to make the gains or reach the goals that they want to. So as gyms start to reopen a little bit and people are making their way back to the gym, we're going to talk a little bit about what their goal should be, or specifically what we can do to make those a little bit better for them so they have a general sense of, hey, this is what I want to go after for the first 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But right now, the gyms are not open yet. And we are still waiting for that word. And we're hoping very, very soon.
Sometime soon.
But we got to talk about what we can do at home right now.
For sure.
So what are some things that you would suggest, just on a general level, of what can people do at home? They're going home and they're, cooking
Working
at home now.
from home, doing a lot of things at home.
Hopefully you've learned to cook.
Hopefully.
But for some of us, it's the quick fixes. It's the frozen dinners. It's the cake that's available when you open the fridge is a whole lot quicker to eat than making something on the stove. So, Mary, just talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are on maintenance and what these guys and girls should be doing at home.
So if we kind of number one, if you feel like you've completely fallen off the wagon, number one, we're just going to stand up. We're not going to judge ourselves. This is, as everyone likes to say, unprecedented time. So
for sure.
Nobody could have, anticipated things that we're going through right now. So it's okay to not beat yourself up about falling off the wagon a little. But we got to get back on, especially once those gyms open and we're coming back in here. Don't let, Scott's first workout really kick your butt because you had, pizza and beers the night before you came in the first day of the gym. So we still have somewhere to go. Think back to when you did have to go to work every day. Did you meal plan? Did you make your lunch the night before? Did you set your snacks out? Those kinds of things can still be stuff that we're doing right now. We don't have to completely give up our routines. So if you wanted to start doing something like that to, anticipating, even as some businesses are opening, we can start with, meal plan for a week. And it doesn't have to be hard. It could be as easy as, I'm just going to cook these 4 pieces of chicken, maybe make some brown rice, maybe cut up some vegetables so that they're available. So it's not like I have to come home and like I have to do all the things. Like something could be available.
I think it's funny when you say, hey, we need to meal prep. People immediately go, I need to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the entire week, right?
You don't have to exactly think about exactly what that meal's going to be, but we probably eat chicken or ground turkey or maybe some fish, things like that. Beans, Scott and his beans, his vegan beans. But we eat those things, so why not just have them kind of cooked and ready to go? But when I have, I'll cook 4 breasts of chicken at the same time because I know that I might eat it in a salad. I might eat it in like a skillet meal. I might slice it up thinly and have it in a sandwich. So, but it's ready to go, and it's one less thing you have to do. So meal planning doesn't have to be the boxes. It doesn't have to be the bento boxes. It can just be like, oh, I batch cooked some chicken, some beans, some rice. At least have a few things going.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously at home there's, less opportunity to go to the grocery store. So people are going there and they're buying a little bit more in bulk.
Yeah.
Some people who are baking monthly are baking weekly. Some who are baking weekly are baking daily. And now, not that we don't love baked goods, but it seems to be one of the things that is most consistent in people's lives. And they go and they're making these things that pleasure them in the sense, this feels good to make and good to eat. However, as we know, as some put it, the quarantine 15
absolutely
is a very real
jealous.
thing. And we kind of just want to get a sense of, what are some of those meals that we've gone through, we want to meal prep, right? What are a couple things? Is snacking okay? Is that something that you recommend for people?
So, if you didn't snack prior to quarantine, I probably wouldn't suggest doing it now because we want to try to stay in those things. And I'm not saying that snacking is bad. It works for some people. I think some people are super happy with 3 meals a day. My grandparents, every meal, placemat, all the utensils, but it was 3 meals a day and there was not much of snacking in between. So, but that's what worked for them. For some people, they like the 4 to 6 smaller meals a day because maybe you have to go a longer period of time between breakfast and lunch just based on your day, and you try to do a little snack either before or after, or maybe it's kind of 3 or mid-sized meals and then a regular sized dinner, something like that. So it's fine to do those things, but it needs to be consistent. We can't go from like three meals a day and then the next day do like 8 tiny snacks. I mean, try to have some consistency. The less our body wonders when it's going to get fuel, the more efficiently it works.
Great. So I'm going to throw just a fun one at you. With that being said, you mentioned 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. You mentioned the 4 to 6 meals and smaller. What about intermittent fasting? I'm going to take a quick opinion on that.
Opinion on intermittent fasting. I think that intermittent fasting can be used for periods of time. It can be used for periods of time to kind of get the body into a place where it wants to work more efficiently. I would try to use that intermittent fasting in a way where you're still getting your fuel that you need for workouts and stuff. Because it's sometimes, I'm for a fasted workout personally. When I come in the morning, I know that my body works better. If I'm doing an hour workout, I don't eat before because I like that fasted workout. But I know that we do have some members who they need that little bit of energy before they come in here.
Totally.
And that's a very person-specific thing, and it's something you can play around with. If you're playing around with stuff, but you got to play around with it consistently for like a couple weeks and see what difference it makes. You can't go in and out of it. So to your point, if intermittent fasting is something we want to try, absolutely. I would probably go on the longer term, more of like the 10 or 12 hour versus the 8 hour, because I just think that you can get a little bit more consistency in that 10 to 12 hour versus the 8 hour. But you got to do it for a period of time. And I would say with the intermittent fasting, you're looking at 2 or 3 months to really see some differences there.
Yeah, I think the word consistency, that's one of my favorite words that I use.
Absolutely.
Consistency is everything with something like that. And we've had the discussions with a lot of our members of, hey, we've tried the intermittent fasting and it worked really well, but when you're coming in for a high intensity workout and there's nothing in your system and you haven't eaten, possibilities of you feeling fatigued, lightheaded are going to be, much more susceptible to things like that.
Or just not being able to work as hard.
Oh, exactly. And we can't make the change if we can't push the intensity, right? We want to maintain safety, and not eating sometimes can also lead to risk of injury. But like you said, it's so specific to every individual person, and I think that's where people get a little bit stuck as they hear this person's doing intermittent fasting. This one's doing
Yeah.
5 meals a day. This one's doing 3. What do I do?
What works for you? And, it's taken me years sometimes to figure that out. And even, a lot of fine tuning. So, I mentioned an hour because I know if a workout's about an hour, that's kind of my threshold. If my workout's going to be longer than an hour, like a race or a half marathon or something, I have to fuel beforehand. And that fueling beforehand should be 30 to 45 minutes before, because you don't want to be digesting that food as soon as we want to give it some time. 30 to 45 minutes before is for fueling. And then on the flip side too, if you're doing that fueling before, we also got to fuel after 30 to 45 minutes too. So
some of it's right, some of it's fuel, some of it's recovery, but some of that recovery is the fuel to get us into that next workout tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
We'll start thinking about the days ahead, not just I have a workout in 45 minutes and then I need to figure out what's after. It's developing a plan of consistency to do that regularly. And, what are a couple of things that you would say people could try to eat 45 minutes before class? Someone with a sensitive stomach like me, what would be a good option to try?
So I would probably, if you have an affinity for bananas, they're quick, because bananas, our bodies break down fairly easily because it's more of a simple sugar. Still a sugar from a fruit, so I like it a little bit better than just throwing table sugar.
Yeah.
But that one it's gonna break down in your body and get to your muscles a little bit more quickly. Now, we don't want something that's super high in fat though to go with that. However, I do like a small amount of peanut butter possibly. It's got a little bit of protein, and with the tablespoon, not nearly as much fat, but that protein banana combo can be a really good one. And then if you need just a little bit more, I know some people like a piece of toast with the peanut butter, but it's kind of the toast and the banana to me are about the same. I like the banana a little bit more personally because there's not nearly as much fiber as something like a piece of toast. So nobody wants race day or training.
Race day and fiber
surprises
are not two words that you put together.
Yes. You don't need surprises when we come to that. So, but that's why we practice things like that. We go out on practice runs. So
absolutely,
that's when we use that time to figure out what that fuel can be. So
I think the gym's a great place for that, right? We are in here training for something else, right? So
we're always doing those things.
If we need to test something out of, hey, I want to work hard for 30 minutes with something in my stomach that I've never had before. Better to do it in a safe and closed environment with either
it's a no judgment zone. If you run to the bathroom, we don't care.
By all means, the bark mulch, whatever it is. But giving yourself the opportunity to test out some stuff. Maybe one thing is right for me, but is not right for you. Maybe some people get reflux from a banana where others don't get anything. So test some of these things out, right? Absolutely. And try some other things, and you'll start to see what's most efficient and effective for you. So
you can also step outside of the box. It's probably because of my nutrition background, but foods are specific to meals to me. So there's breakfast foods, lunch foods, and dinner foods, but it doesn't have to be that way. So if there's some kind of like dinnery thing that works for you and you want to have it in the morning, like some bean and rice thing, and that works for you, maybe in the morning. Hey, there's really technically no rules about what you eat when, exactly. But if you're crazy like me, I have to have the breakfast food at the breakfast time.
It's funny because I like breakfast for dinner and breakfast for breakfast, so you mix it up a little bit here and there.
A little bit.
So for those individuals who are coming back, we talked a little bit about how many meals, eating, what's kind of specific to them. If you have any advice for somebody who's coming back and jumping into the gym who just hasn't really been working out very hard, we've softened up a little. Our conditioning's not great. Our lungs are a little bit heavy when we're starting to move. Our heartbeat's a little bit heavy when it shouldn't be through a warm-up. What are your suggestions for those people? Should there be a calorie deficit as they come in? What is their intensity? What's kind of your thoughts of first jumping back in nutrition-wise?
Jumping back in, and if we haven't been necessarily maybe paying attention to some of the foods, I would say let's just start with paying attention to what we're eating and getting kind of back in that routine. We can talk about a deficit after, but the biggest thing is that we shouldn't be going to I want to lose weight. Now I'm back at the gym, so I'm going to not eat all day. And then I'm going to have one meal or, trying to do a calorie deficit that way. We still got to eat all of our meals. So, number one, try to get back into a pattern. Get back in that pattern of what works for you. If it's the 3 meals a day, the 4 to 6 smaller, whichever pattern works for you, try to get back into that. And then, once you get back in that pattern and we've pulled out the like constant snacking and stuff, then let's take a look at what we've eaten. We've put up a short little video blog about what should make up a meal, so we can start looking there. Like, let's look at our protein sources. Let's look at how many vegetable servings we're getting in a day. Let's make sure we're not overdoing it with fruit. I love fruit. I will never say that fruit is bad, but there's a limit to how much fruit is appropriate in a day. And then also, like, where are our fat servings coming from? Am I just dousing my pan in oil to cook? Am I, like, using a ton of extra fat in things? Where's that fat source coming from? And that the fat calories are going to add up the fastest. So if we are looking at a little bit of a calorie deficit, that's one place I want to start. But then whatever fat we are getting, let's make sure that it's healthy fat. And then, looking at our grains, and, maybe if we've been having a sandwich with 2 slices of bread, maybe we can scale that back to an open face sandwich. So we're limiting a little bit of the grain there too, so that we're making sure we get that protein in.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to come back and jump in and say they need to jump into a challenge or a boot camp and like you just said, let's get moving. Let's see how our body responds to just general movements we haven't done in a while. Let's see how our body's feeling based off what we ate, and then make adjustments on, a little bit of time after that.
And maybe it's one meal at a time. Maybe your goal for the first week is, I'm going to have a solid breakfast based on these meal principles, and that's my goal for this week. And then next week, maybe it's I'm adding in, a snack, a healthy snack, because I prefer to have, a snack between meals. Because if we're not, we should be eating roughly every 3 to 5 hours. 3 hours if we're on that, 4 to 6 range. 5 hours if we're in more of that 3 meals in a day. So, if you know that there's a time where, I'm having breakfast here, but I got meetings now and I've got this, so I can't get to my lunch until 6 hours later, a snack in there would be super important. But, think back, like, start with one meal. Start with one day. Start with protein, maybe. Maybe you're just not even getting enough protein in general, so let's just make sure that I'm getting enough protein. And you build off of that. It's the same way we build off of things here at the gym. You're not going to, like, jump on the rower and bust out, a 2K in under 5 minutes. I can't do that. Yeah. I don't even think
it's not going to turn out well.
I've never done it. But so, and maybe we're going to come in here. Maybe we used to throw up the 14-pound wall ball. That might not be a possibility when we come right back in here. It might be a 10, or it might even be something smaller. So think about meals in that way too. We don't have to go all balls to the wall in our workouts. We also don't have to do that with our food. If we were disciplined enough to do that, we probably wouldn't be coming in here soft after quarantine anyway. Yes. So build on little bits as we're going along.
That's awesome. That's great. So we're going to jump to the other end of that. I've been working out, right? I've been following along for the last 10 weeks of every body weight workout with some mix-in of dumbbells and stuff at home that I do have equipment for. But we had some people that have been killing it, like doing really well. So their conditioning...
You know who you are.
Yes, you do. Conditioning is really high. Body weight control. They're moving through space really well. Some of their gymnastics movements have improved. Their core stability has improved. Now I want to put on a little bit of muscle mass and maybe gain a little bit of that weight back that I may have lost. I want to jump under a bar. I want to start doing some big, heavy movements.
I do too.
Where do we start with those athletes? Is this are we talking more of a, are we talking pre-workouts? Are we talking during workouts? I want to speak more on the general sense of what we should be eating for those athletes at the beginning of a workout or before. And then what's going to be a little bit different for those athletes at the end in their recovery versus maybe somebody who's just getting back.
Yeah. So, when we're looking at gaining, in the gym, what we do is we break down our muscles. We break them down. That's why they get sore, and then we have to rebuild them. There's this important little nutrient that a lot of people like to ignore sometimes that actually helps that protein get into our muscles, and it's carbohydrates. If we don't have the carbohydrates, the door does not open to get that protein back into the muscle. So it's super important to make sure that we're pairing those things together.
So to stop you real quick there, there's that fear. Carbohydrate is a sugar, right? So I don't want sugar in my body, but you're telling me that it's going to help me. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that is?
So, but what I'm looking at, so there's simple sugars, things like table sugar, fruits. We've talked about fruits. that our body breaks down really efficiently. I kind of call them like the white kind of white breads, white rice, white sugars. They're just not as fibrous as their counterparts, the whole grains, that are a little bit more. Now, what I like to look at though is whole foods. So, did that nutrient come from the ground, or is it as basic as possible? I look at something like if I have a banana with some protein, well, I know where that banana came from, and I know that it doesn't have a lot of nobody sprinkled it with sugar,
Yeah.
so that's okay. It's okay. Some sugars are okay, and technically, our brains only run off of sugar. They only run off of glucose. So it is still important to get that in there. And to try to not be fearful of it. Now, if you're going to bring me like a protein bar that has like 30 grams of sugar and 30 grams of protein, and I look at the sugar source and it's coming all from like cane sugar, dextrose, some of those other terms that are used, rice syrup, that just do straight mean sugar, then yeah, I'm going to say that one's maybe not the best choice that we could go with. Let's try to get a little bit more natural source of that sugar in there. So, not super scared, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think athletes coming back and knowing that, oh, I had a protein bar for lunch today is not sufficient in what we're looking for a meal replacement.
No, they should supplement something. I am a big proponent of eating in general. I like whole foods. I do not feel satisfied unless I've had like a meal.
It's
Fair enough.
we call those chewers, people who enjoy big greens and salads, stuff that it takes time for them to actually get through, which is also important because you're not shoveling everything down. You're allowing your body the opportunity to take it in a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So I think for our athletes that are coming back, who want to get underneath these bars, who want to get some of these heavier weights back,
and we want to get that muscle foundation going again.
Yep.
Yes. So we need to look at for those athletes, we're looking at, you do need to do a little bit before. We need to find the foods that you can handle before a workout, but then it's also important for the after. And maybe that's your entire breakfast. And we take what that breakfast would be and we break it up into two parts. And one's before your workout and one's after. 30, 45 minutes. And they can be traditional foods or they can be non-traditional breakfast things that you want to get in. But that timing's a little important to make sure that that protein's getting into our muscle and that we have it to use while we're working out. The other point I wanted to make too is that if we look at maybe the protein blog that we've put up, there is a chart on there and there's ranges of protein content. So our athletes that want to gain muscle, you're going to want to eat on that higher end of the protein chart. A more maintenance type athlete would probably go in the middle. And so it's important to get to that upper threshold that's there for the protein. And you might have to do that a little bit more. And we might also need to use things like protein supplements. So maybe your pre-workout is kind of like a protein shake and a banana. Or maybe that's what your post-workout is. It can be either or, but it's making sure that you're getting that fuel to recover those muscles.
Totally. Yeah, I think recovery becomes the hardest part, obviously, for just about any of us. And, people get fearful to talk about supplementation. I am somebody who supplements a lot of things. I am not somebody who can eat. I work through my days and I don't stop. I keep going, right?
Scotty and I are very different.
It goes. And I find myself not being able to go, oh, I want to make a meal, or maybe I forgot my lunch at home. So I am a big believer in some meal replacements with high quality proteins. I do, as you know, a lot of vegan proteins. I add a little bit of carbohydrates to that as well, just because it's so much protein, so little carbs, so I try to bring that up to make it more of a meal replacement. And I'm trying to get that a little bit more specific on my post-workout. I'm also adding in a little bit of creatine, which for me I think is extremely important, bringing water to muscles, allowing for better recovery. Sometimes I'll even do a little bit of creatine before my workout, but not super often because I do have a tendency to start to cramp a little bit, or, so I think for a lot of athletes that confusion of when should I supplement and what are the best things for me to supplement.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, not always at home, on the go. I actually personally recently brought back some protein supplements. I don't love them, but I've brought them back because it's a way that I can. And you can make a meal with a protein supplement. So, I mean, if we look at something like a protein shake, make your own. Don't buy those like pre-made protein shakes that you see in the juice aisle, because they definitely have way more than 3 servings of fruit in them in a day. Even though they may not have any added sugar, there may be more than 3 servings of fruit. Make it on your own. I have transitioned some days to using that in the morning because I know that it's going to be a little bit easier and I know I'm going to get what I need. So, for instance, when you look at a protein supplement, and we're happy to look at them with you, but there should not be a ginormous laundry list of things that are in that supplement. Some of them do if they're vitamins and minerals, that's okay, but there shouldn't be a lot of like other things.
Words you can't pronounce.
Yeah, there's going to be words you can't pronounce, but that's just a little bit of the the world of supplements. But I found a protein powder that I'm happy with, and they all taste slightly different. So even also finding the one that you like, but I found one where I think there's like 6 ingredients. It's a pea protein and then some other stuff in there that complement that pea protein. So also finding one that's going to be that way. Now, I do not make a protein supplement that does not have a handful of spinach in it. You can't taste it. It just makes it green and gross looking, but you can't taste it. And if it's gross looking, put it in a cup that you can't see. I always add 1 serving of fruit, whether it's like a half of a banana with a couple strawberries, or maybe it's a whole banana. And then in particular today, I also had a tablespoon of it's nut butter. It was an almond butter in there. And I added some chia seeds. So there are a few ways that you can make smoothies and use all of the ingredients and all of the principles that are in a meal to make that. Now, if I just needed it to be a snack, some water and protein powder, perfect. It's a snack. Yeah. But if I want to use it as an actual meal replacement, it needs to have some more of those components like fruits, vegetables, healthy fats in them. And for some people, like I would probably suggest for you, is adding maybe that oatmeal. Adding oats to your protein drink is also a good way to get some good carbs in there.
I think one of the things, is when I use those things, it's like you just said, maybe that's to hold me over until I can get to that meal. A meal replacement for me is not ideal, right? I want to eat foods. I want to get real nutrients into my body from whole foods that came from the ground. But there are going to be times if you're going through things like weight gain or where you can't physically get that much food in, where those meal replacements or additional meals, don't think of them as replacements, think of them as additional meals that you're trying to be able to get in. And that's where I tend to...
a more condensed way to get it in.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people look at that and go, am I replacing lunch with a shake because it has a higher calorie count or a higher protein count? No, that's not the goal. Right? The goal is to be able to, I want my protein, which, from most of my athletes that I talk to, you can look at any app that you want, the MyFitnessPals, any of these trackers, and they'll come to me and their fats, hit them for the day, carbs, hit them for the day, protein, oh boy.
Oops.
And finding different protein sources, like you just said, there's pea protein, brown rice protein, there's steak protein, there is casein, there are so many different forms of it, but you got to figure out what works for you. For me, I can't do a whey protein because it messes with my stomach, lactose intolerant, sensitive.
Same.
So for those type of individuals, you suggest, trying a couple of different ones of those, or, what's the best one if I am going to do a meal replacement versus a just kind of holdover snack?
I think the most popular protein supplements you find in a store or even in like the pre-made ready-to-go bottles is a whey protein, which is a milk dairy-based protein. And similar to you, Scotty, I can't take a whey protein because I am also lactose intolerant, milk protein intolerant, that it just doesn't agree with my stomach, and which gets worse as you get older. Good luck. So I try to tend to use like vegan, vegetarian protein choices, which are just as complete and just as beneficial as a animal-based protein. So they're made in a way to have all of the essential amino acids in there. that make up our proteins. So it's just kind of like trying a few. I know when I used to work with my bariatric patients, that was a very important aspect to their world was they have a smaller volume. So how do I get all that protein in? They couldn't do it without using supplements.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a way. And I told them to go out and explore because there's so many. There could be a random one at a Walgreens that you might like.
It's true.
And I even feel like the one that I found recently that I like because it has so few ingredients. I'm a very big label reader. We'll maybe have a podcast about that sometime. But I want to understand and know all the things that are in there. So I found a random one that I'd never heard of before. So, and I constantly have friends sending me like, oh, I found this protein supplement. What do you think of it? So I look at them and see, and I just give my honest opinion. But I guarantee you that if I see the word sugar, dextrose, or whatever in that protein supplement, I'm not going to like it.
Correct. I think it's funny, you know, some friends send me pictures of the protein label, and I say, okay, well, send me the actual
like,
nutritional
I want to see the
facts.
actual ingredients.
None of the cool pictures on the front and what it says it does are really what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk about adding these protein supplements, these different options. I did mention creatine. It's something that I think every athlete should be taking. That's a personal opinion. Everybody's a little bit different. But there's research that basic creatine monohydrate, you know, 5 to 10 grams a day is beneficial to just about anybody.
And it comes in a simple powder, so it's not like it's...
Correct.
It's not this, like, big additional thing that you have to do. It can be
very
thrown
cheap.
In
about 100 servings. 100 servings is $11 or $12.
Yeah.
It's a small scoop, but it's something that's really going to benefit you with your recovery, getting some more water into your muscles. Some people say, oh, it causes bloating, or I feel like I'm holding on to water. Well, that's essentially what creatine is supposed to do.
But also, are we drinking enough water?
Correct.
So are you flushing your system and getting enough water in there in general to do that? Because otherwise your body will hold on to water.
And it's important to know that when we're talking about things like that we're not buying these big complexes, right? It may say creatine, then all of a sudden it has arginine and all these other things, B vitamins and stuff that's trying to somehow intensify that creatine, when in reality what I'm talking about is as basic form of creatine as you can get, as complex carbohydrates as you can get, so staying away from those, you know, white whole wheat flours, that white rice, and then of course that quality protein. So we're looking at some very specific things of, you know, these are some of the main things. And if you're hearing, ooh, I'm not sure about my protein, I'm not sure about the carbohydrates that I'm getting, or don't even think about the creatine just yet, but hey, we got to start really focusing in at one at a time. Where do you suggest people start? I know we have a video on it, but tell me where you go first.
We got to look at the food. Like, generally we should be able to get most everything we need if we're eating whole foods. Mm-hmm. We should be getting all the vitamins and minerals we need, but then that can be specific to individuals. We all have different tolerances of how our body processes those vitamins and minerals. So, you know, I think looking at a diary, I know it sucks, but just writing down for 3 days. And it's not like, oh, I'm writing down, so I'm going to be super good. Write down legit 3 days. If you have to just try to remember back, what did I eat 3 days ago? And honestly, write it down. You're not hurting me by not writing it down.
Be honest.
It's only hurting you. So really take some inventory of how you are, because I think my favorite line ever is, I eat pretty well. Okay, what does that mean?
That's like people saying to me, I'm going to get into a little bit better shape before I come back to the gym.
I eat pretty healthy. So, you know, I think that we'd like to think that about ourselves. I'd like to think that about myself too, but do I indulge in some wine? Yes. Do I indulge in some chocolate? Yes. We all do these things. So, you know, give yourself a good, honest inventory of what you're eating, and let's start there. Let's start with what you're eating. Let's see where you're, like Scott said, they're hitting carbs, hitting fat, but not getting anywhere close to protein. And so, all right, well, let's just start with protein. Let's make sure we're getting our appropriate amount of protein in every meal, and then we can start working on the other. Now, I don't want you to overeat, so yes, hopefully you're pulling back on some of that fat and carbohydrates, so now we're not overeating in general. You know, this is not like a free-for-all, like, okay, just eat till you're comfortable. It's, let's do some visual awareness and things like that too.
Yeah, I think portion control is a big part. People, lack is, hey, I have all the right things on my plate, but my plate is full. I have 2
Huge,
servings
yeah.
on a single plate, and I'm going to
Yeah.
go back for more afterwards. And I think that's where a lot of, I have a few athletes who, hey, I feel like I'm having trouble losing weight. And it's, well, we're doing all the right stuff at the gym. We're working out consistently. You're telling me you're eating the right stuff. And then it goes into, well, I'm eating a lot of the right stuff.
Yeah, so, it's not that you have to weigh and measure every single meal, but you can use some tricks to make sure that you are. Use a consistent plate. Have your dinner on the same plate, your lunch, your breakfast, every time. And then you weigh out those portions so you can visually see it. You know that my, carbs should take up this little section, and if it's more, then I've gotten too much. That doesn't mean pile it higher. It just means that's where that should take up. I don't measure out, I don't measure out spinach or vegetables or things like that, because I rather you have a little bit more. And if you feel like you need a little bit more to feel full, vegetables are where I prefer you to go. They've got a lot of fiber in them, helps keep you regular. And then that's also going to add some of that bulk to make you feel more full, so that you don't have to pile on more of the carbohydrates, more of the fats to feel full. And while it doesn't happen often, we can overdo protein. If you're having a 12-ounce steak with, and maybe that's still in that's our protein, but probably don't need 12 ounces at one serving, then along with all of our other portions too. So
totally. And I think, like you said, maybe measure out for a couple of days to see what does an actual chicken breast, a 4-ounce chicken breast or a 6-ounce chicken breast really looks like.
Yeah.
What is my plate of vegetables really supposed to look like? And I want my athletes to be really conscious of, and I want to get your input on is, I think cooked vegetables are great, and you want to find a good amount of portion of cooked vegetables. But if you have raw vegetables, broccoli, and things like that, indulge, please. Have as much as you possibly can, because you're going to fill up pretty quickly, and none of those things are going to cause any irreparable damage. Those are things that are going into your body. Protein, if you take too much of it, your body just kind of rejects, it passes and moves out.
It's not going to use it in the way that it's supposed to be used.
Exactly.
Our protein can be stored as it can be stored as sugars in our body, and it can be stored as fat in our bodies. So if we're overusing it, then it's going to be stored in those ways and not used the way that we made it to be used.
That's perfect.
For some people, I know just the volume of the raw veggies can be hard, and for some people, certain ones make them maybe a little bit more gassy, so be a little careful maybe. Maybe don't do a big plate of raw veggies and then come in here.
Don't go out and go for a record.
Evening classes.
Yes, please don't.
But I probably would. I don't think I've ever told someone, don't eat so many vegetables. And I even had to have conversations with people who are like, but carrots are bad. I'm sorry, I have not met a person in my life yet that gained 100 pounds from eating carrots. So I think they're okay. It's just a variety. Another thing you can kind of look at too is how colorful is your plate? If you're having a white piece of chicken, white rice, and some white potatoes, it's very unexciting and very plain. Yeah. We can switch that to a grilled chicken breast, maybe some sweet potatoes, and maybe some brown rice. And now we've colored up our plate
and totally changed the nutrition.
And totally made it a more satisfying, longer lasting energy. You're not going to be hungry as soon after having something like that, and it's prettier.
Yes.
So eat from the rainbow. Definitely eat from the rainbow, and maybe try something new. Try cooking it a different way. I know that we all have our preferences of things that we like, and after a certain point, I think we're very stuck in those preferences. But, cauliflower rice just took over everything in the world, from pizza crust to potatoes to rice in general. So, if cauliflower rice can do what it's done, then we can try some other vegetables and see what we think. So,
absolutely.
And it's maybe just cooking it too. Cooking it a different way.
And I think a lot of this is, these are some of the basic things that we want all of our athletes to know. There's a lot of things that we touched on and a lot of directions that we could go into. And our goal right now is to start you from phase number 1, is getting you back into the gym, and let's figure out where you are. You know, Mary does consultations. She's a great person to come to and give that diary to. the one that you may not want to put everything onto, but
please do.
Please write everything
helps me
specific
out.
on there. You're not harming anyone or hurting anyone, but if you snuck a Milky Way in or some sort of chocolate bar, just put it on there so we can figure out where those extra calories, those extra carbohydrates are coming from. And then that way we can sit down with Mary, with Suzanne, with one of our dietitians and say, here's where I'm at. This is where I'm starting. How do we move forward?
And my goal is not to take things away from you. This, the world is not about eliminating things, because
people fear you for that.
If you're gonna have a candy bar again in your life, then I've got to figure out a way that you can have it in a good way. So I'm not here to spend 3 months taking a bunch away from you and expect that you're never going to touch that again. That's not my goal. My goal is, let's find a way to eat within what we are. And you'll notice that Scotty and I did not talk about any fad diets in this entire conversation, because if it's not something we can't do for the rest of our life, then there's no point in doing it. So if it's something that's going to come up, if you're going to have a glass of wine with your girlfriends or your guy group or whatever, then we've got to figure out a way to work that in.
Absolutely.
So
I love that you brought up the fad diet stuff. On purpose, I didn't bring up paleo, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. I mean, you can go so many different directions.
Many. And there's ways that work for certain people.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that consistency and that commitment. My favorite is probably 80-85% of the time. That's when we got to be good, because realistically, life is the other 15 to 20% too. So, there's nothing about being perfect. I am not a perfect eater. You'll know that if you've been, anybody who's worked out with me, eaten with me, you know that I'm not a perfect eater, because that's not the reality of my world. I need to learn. I needed to learn how to do these things, which is why I like my food principles, because as long as I'm following that, and then every once in a while, a glass of wine, a chocolate, French fries sneak in there, it's okay.
And it's not I like that you said, you like to eat, but you're also conscious. You are aware of what you're eating. You understand that, yes, I'm still going to eat this, but I know this isn't the best thing that I can have right now. What is my plan moving forward? Not to feel guilty, but to, get those extra calories out, to feel like I have either earned this or I want to burn this off somehow. And I think that's important for people to know, that it's, keep some sanity. It is the number one thing they do not put on a nutrition label that has a lot of information that says this is going to make you not only feel good physically, but also emotionally. Because that chocolate bar tastes real good, but in an hour, when you're crashing hard off the sugars and now you're craving real food again, your body's going to go, oh, but I could have another chocolate bar real quick and feel good for another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that, as we're talking about even fad diets, and we're going to get into some of those in some podcasts for sure, but we need to start with the general stuff that Mary's talking about right now. And when you figure out the general stuff, you can start to say, hey, this is looking a little bit like paleo. Maybe this is something that is more in the realm of what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, I like that you're a vegan, but, there are I love my cheese. I love some of that. Okay, well, let's start looking more towards vegetarian. So you're not saying I'm a vegan with the guilt of being a vegetarian.
Yeah.
You don't have to get there. Right now, it's general. Let's talk to Mary. Let's see what we're eating, how much we're eating, and what we can do to make little changes now, so that the long term we're seeing the big changes, rather than this has to happen in 4 weeks. I've been quarantined for 8. I gained 15 pounds. It's a state of emergency.
And I'm going to lose it in the same, overnight.
Be humble. Know that what we just went through is not a common thing on this earth, and we're all working back in our own ways. But that is why we have people like Mary, people like Suzanne, people like myself, Kainoa, that we can do some of these consultations with, and we want to get more specific and really detailed on those diets. That's why we have registered dietitians. That's where I get away from my scope of strength and conditioning, and I say, I don't need to answer these questions, because I have somebody who knows so much more about them and can really help you. So make sure you guys are reaching out to us with questions. Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
We're definitely going to have you back for some more fun conversations. I know that these guys are going to have some questions on some of the stuff we talked about, so we'll touch on those next time we hop in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. I thought that went really well.
That was awesome.